Hey everybody, welcome to part 4 of how to create your own 2D Crossy road with Swift and Xcode. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so first order of the day, let's open up crossyroad.xcode project and we're going to head over to our viewcontroller.swift. Now first thing we want to do is change the colors of our landscape randomly. So in order for us to do this, let's go down here to where it says for I in 0 self.landscape.count -1. This is where it says basically if the landscape.center.y is greater than or it goes off the scene, then we move it right up to the top. Now when we move it up to the top, we want it to also randomize the color scheme. So in order for us to do this, we need to go up here to if the self.landscape.y is greater than, so on and so forth. We need to go right inside of this if statement. And inside of this if statement, we want to create a variable. So we'll call this variable just random number. And this will be equal to an integer, like so. And then down here, we want to have a switch case. Now this switch case basically means what are the different cases that are going to happen for each of the random numbers picked. So we can say switch random number, and then right after that, do an open curly bracket, and then a close curly bracket after that. And we will have in which the case or random number is equal to 0. We want something to happen, like so. And then we want to add a break statement, basically saying if this is not true, we move on to the next thing. So then we say case 1. So if it's equal to 1, then we want to do something else. And then lastly, we will have a case 2. You can of course add more later on, but I'm not going to show you. Then lastly, we need a default. So this default is basically going to be if none of these cases are true, what is going to happen? So default colon. There we are. And now we have our switch case all set up, but we are not randomizing this random number right up here. So in order for us to do this, we just say random number is equal to arc for random. This just is a very intelligent randomizer, I guess. And then we go %3. So in the case that it is 0, 1, 2, as you can see, this %3 is actually going to be equal to 0, 1, and 2. It's going to be picking through those 3 numbers, but it starts at 0. So in which the case is 0, 1, or 2, we want to actually change our landscape I a different color. So we need to go down here and just say landscape I dot background color will be equal to a UI color dot red color. Now if you're wondering, well, where are you getting this I from? It's right up here where it's actually picking the random number I, and we're putting it inside of this if statement because it's going to specifically change the color of the landscape object that we are moving to the top. So you might make sure that it is in this if statement, or else you'll be randomizing all the colors, and that would not be good. So now go down here to case 2, and we'll basically do the exact same thing, just with a different color. Now, of course, you can always say UI color dot brown color, or you can do an RGB just by going right after the UI color, saying RGB. But in tutorial purposes, we're just going to go down brown color. And then lastly, we will have landscape I dot background color will be equal to a UI color dot, and we'll make this one a blue color. And our default color, we just want this to be equal to, we'll say our default color will be equal to a red color. Now right up here it's saying cannot assign a value of type uint32 to a type of int. And that is true because this is actually an integer as we call it up here. So in order for us to fix this, let's just go ahead and erase this whole first line where we created the variable of random number, and we're going to put that right in here. So basically the uint32 will go into this switch statement right here, and we're not going to get any errors now. So now if we were to build and run, we will get our Crossy road going along, and again we have our scoring, and as you will see we have these browns, reds, and blues colors. I know they're not the best looking colors. You can of course edit the colors yourself, but those are our colors that we want popping up. It looks like we are actually missing one of these lines right here. We can fix that later, but for now, we're gonna just dismiss that. Now this is something that I really didn't go over last time, and it is UI view.animate with duration. You can have different options for the different animation that you would like to have. So you can have UI view animations.options curved linear, which is what we have right now, where the background is just moving at a linear rate, so it's automatically just straight going there. But you can also edit this, and I've kind of grown to like the curve ease out, like so. And we can also do this for our landscape, so we can say curve ease out. Now, if we were to build and run this, you will see that we have our person, and it's a more sudden thing. It's a little bit more bouncy than it usually was. I like it. It's not too much of a difference, just one of those nitpicky things that I kind of like. So next thing we need to do is make sure that our player is intersecting with things correctly. Let's say if he hits this blue object right here, we want him to die. So down here in our for statement right here, where it's checking through all the landscapes and moving them down, we need to also add another thing, another if statement. So this will say if our player dot frame dot intersects, and we'll say it intersects with our landscape for the I value, then we want certain things to happen. Now this should actually be self.player.frame.intersects, and this will be landscape I.frame. So if they intersect frames together, meaning the landscape or the player, once they intersect, we want something to happen. This should also be self.landscape.frame. What do we want to happen? Well, there's another statement that needs to go in here. So we need to put ampersand, and say also if our self.landscape for the I value dot background color will be equal to a UI color dot brown color, and this should actually be blue color, as we're trying to make this like water. So once it hits the water, so once it intersects with the frame, we also want to make sure that it's blue color, and if it's a blue color, then we want him to die. So we want to say nslog you dead. So we're just going to leave that nslog statement in there for a second, and we're getting this error because this should actually be a comparison statement where it says, where it's comparing whether the background color of our landscape right here is equal to a blue color. Now I typed nslog in wrong, like so. Now let's build and run, and let's try hitting a blue color object. So right, this is not blue right yet. Let's try this one right here. There we are. So this one right here is the blue color, and as that's coming in, it just, as soon as it hits that blue color, it says you dead. So now we can click another, hit another blue one, and you will see this as you're dead. Now we need to also go over to our main.storyboard, and we want to create another view controller. This will be our end scene view controller, so let's go ahead, add a view controller in there like so. And let's just change the size of him to an iPhone 4.7 inch, like so, so it just matches up properly. Then we're also going to just add a button in there that will just say play again. Then let's take right click or control click and drag from this play again button, and we're going to say center vertically and center horizontally, and you can select both of these just by holding shift like so. So it's centered, and now we need to create a Swift file for this view controller that we just created. So say file, new file, and this is going to be a Swift file, so go up here to your source, Swift file, click next, and we'll save this as our end view controller. Create. And now that we have this end view controller, we can change the class of it to a end VC. We'll just call this end VC for end view controller, colon, and then we also need to import our UI kit so we can hook it up to our UI interface. So just type in UI kit. And now we want this end view controller to be of the subclass of a UI view controller. And then down here we wanted to say view did load, like so. And then let's go over to our main.storyboard, click on our view controller right here so it highlights it in blue. Head over to our identity inspector, and our class, we're going to change the class to NVC. Now this is going to be connected with the file that we created. So we're going to be able to edit the view controller from the file that we just created. Now it's not coming up automatically, so go up here, go manual, Crossy rod, and go to your end view controller like so. Now let's hook up our play again button over to our view controller, and we want this to be a outlet, and we'll call this play again btn. We need to also save this file, so just go Command S. That will make it usable. So now right click or control click and drag from this play again button again, and we will just put play again btn. Connect. And then we need to also do this again with our play again button, and this time it's going to be an action, and we'll just call this play again action, like so. Now that we have this done, let's go into our play again action. Now inside of this play again action, first thing we need to do is actually call our storyboard right here. So say self.storyboard.instantiate view controller with identifier, and we are going to call this identifier our view controller right over here. So let's click on this view controller right here, and it says storyboard ID. We want to go right in here inside of our identity inspector, and inside of here click our storyboard ID, and we'll just call this view controller. And then we also need to go back to our end VC, and we will go to our storyboard ID and call this end VC. Now we need to say self.storyboard, or first we need to actually create this as a variable. So we need to say var, we'll say view controller will be equal to self.storyboard instantiate view controller with identifier, and this will be the identifier of view controller that we just created inside of here. So be sure it's matching the exact same storyboard ID that you have right here. And then we need to say as a UI view controller, or whatever the superclass of your view controller is. In this case, it's a UI view controller. So now that that's done, we need to say self.present view controller, and we need to present the view controller that we just created. So let's type in view controller. And this will actually be view controller temp. That way we can, this will be our temporary view controller. That way we can call it a bit better and make sure that is the exact view controller that we want to call. Animated, we will set this to true, and completion, we will set this to nil. And this again will be as a UI view controller. We're telling it this is a view controller. Don't worry about it. We got it handled. And it looks like I improperly put those parentheses in there. And this should not have an exclamation point. So this is a view controller temp as a UI view controller. We're telling it that, and now we're going to switch over to our view controller.swift and basically do the exact same thing. So again, we can actually just copy and paste this right over here inside of our for I, right where it says intersects. So when it intersects, we're also wanting to go over to the view controller. So now here we want to say var view controller temp. We'll actually change this to end VC temp. That way we can keep names a little bit better. End VC temp is equal to self.storyboard. And then we need to go down here and say end VC temp as UI view controller animated true. And now if we were to build and run this, when we hit a blue object, we are going to move over to our other scene. So let's go ahead, hit a blue object. Although that did look pretty cool, that was not the way we wanted it to be. We need to go down here to our NVC temp, and we actually want to change the identifier that it's trying to instantiate over to NVC. And again, this is in our view controller.swift. I'm going to close this off so it's not so confusing. Now let's build and run this again. And as you can see, when we go ahead and hit this blue view controller, this blue button right here, it's going to say play again, and we can play again. That's it for this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more tutorials like this from me in the future, be sure to subscribe. If you want to follow me on social media, I am @Architap. But thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.